So again, we want to welcome you to the Q&A session for the Voluntary Public Access and Habitat Incentive Program. I'm Yamika Bennett, the Acting Projects Branch Chief, and I will be the facilitator for this event. This session will be recorded, and attendees are asked to submit all questions using the Q&A button throughout the meeting. At the end of the session, we will review and answer as many questions as possible. Shortly after the meeting, we will provide all questions and answers in an FAQ document that will be posted on the VPA-HIP website. Attendees will not be able to use your microphone nor the chat feature during this webinar. So please be sure to use the Q&A button for any questions. You may also submit questions to the program inbox at vpa@usda.gov. And we will be monitoring that inbox for questions during this session as well. And our next speaker will be our Financial Assistance Program Director, Mr. Jerry Rayner. And Mr. Rayner was not able to join us at this time, so we will proceed to the next slide. Thank you. So just a quick summary of what will be discussed today. Again, we want to welcome you all and thank you for taking the time out to find out more information about the VPA-HIP funding opportunity. We'll give you a quick overview, give information on how to apply, and review some of the policy changes for FY26 that may or may not be applicable to your situation. And then we'll have time for question and answers at the end of the session. Next slide, please. So we want to recognize the group who helped plan the event. And I want to start with our Deputy Chief for Programs, Astrid Martinez, also our Division Director for the Financial Assistance Programs Division, Jerry Rayner, myself as Acting Branch Chief. And I also want to introduce everybody to Phil Kip Cherry, who is our VPA-HIP and Wetland Mitigation Banking Program Manager within our group. He'll be presenting today, so after me, you'll mostly hear from Kip. But we also want to thank the rest of the grants team, Caroline, Leah, and Angie. And we also have members of the Grants and Agreements Division, and we have Tessa and Jennifer on with us today. And they'll be available to answer any questions that are grants.gov related or NOFO specific. And lastly, we want to give a shout out to Keisha Harvey for setting up the event for us. So we want to thank her for that. So next up, we will have Phil Kip Cherry to present the rest of the presentation. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. VPA-HIP provides funding to state and tribal governments to create or enhance public access programs that encourage private landowners to make their land available for public access for wildlife-dependent recreation. Next slide. VPA-HIP started as a USDA Farm Service Agency program in 2008 and was transferred to NRCS in 2014. To date, the program has helped open more than 950,000 acres of private land across 30 states for public access. Next slide. Eligible applicants include state and tribal governments. Typically, state wildlife agencies are the primary applicants for VPA-HIP. Tribal governments interested in applying must be federally recognized. This year, up to $52 million is available with funding authorized by the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. The maximum grant awards are $3 million and the minimum is $100,000. The grant can be reduced by 25% if the opening dates for migratory bird hunting are not consistent for residents and non-residents. The reduction is not applicable to tribal governments. Next slide. This is where to submit the application package, and also this is the deadline applications must be received by. Next slide. Awardees have various options for budgeted items to meet the project needs. Each proposal will have unique factors for budgeting costs, but those included here are typical VPA-HIP project costs. For producers, the program funding can also cover wildlife-focused conservation practices such as planting food plots and maintenance of early successional habitats such as pollinator plantings. Next slide. Up to 10% of funding requests can be for technical assistance. Examples of technical assistance can include staffing costs and contractual service rendered. Up to 25% of funding requests can be for habitat improvement incentives. Next slide. $3 million of the total $52 million funding should go to establish public access on wetland reserve easements or wetland reserve program lands, and promoting and reporting are required by the awardee. The local state NRCS office can assist with where these lands are located if you are awarded, and a waiver is possible if none of these lands are in your project area. Expenses can only be reimbursed for activities during the project period and not after the project end date. There is a 3-year max project duration. Next slide. So this is new, and we have had a lot of questions on this already. A lot of people wanting to know about adjusted gross income requirements and meeting wetland compliance and highly erodible land provisions. But it is not anticipated that this section of the announcement of funding will apply in most cases. The purpose of the program is to expand access to private lands otherwise not accessible to the public. Therefore, the general public accessing the land is the beneficiary of the program, not necessarily the landowner. Grant recipients may procure goods or services to fulfill their obligations under a grant agreement. The state or tribe has discretion to make such procurement under an acquisition or lease payment to the landowner. This in itself does not make the landowner a beneficiary of the program that subjects them to the rules that we otherwise apply to other conservation programs. However, it would be possible that the state or tribe could craft a project in such a way that does make the landowner a beneficiary of the program. Should NRCS select a project that triggers this section, then NRCS will need to coordinate with a state or tribe to ensure it is met. Next slide. If producer eligibility does apply, the AGI limitation requirements state that individuals and certain entity types adjusted gross income must not exceed $900,000 for an average set of tax years. The award recipient must self-certify and maintain records showing that participating producers receiving payments using federal funding meet the eligibility and the AGI requirements. Next slide. The Secretary of Agriculture may waive the AGI limit on a case-by-case basis for waivers with justification showing that environmentally sensitive land of special significance would be protected. This waiver authority has been delegated to NRCS. Awardees may request waivers once their project commences and will work with their NRCS state office for submitting the waiver request. Next slide. The Food Security Act of 1985 prohibits duplicative payments when federal funding is provided for practice implementation. Other USDA program funding must not be used to pay for the same practices as VPA-HIP. However, land enrolled in other programs could be eligible for this program. And these listed here are just a few of the many of USDA conservation programs that need to be considered for possible duplication. If providing an award, the recipient must self-certify that payments to producers using federal funding are not duplicative. This can be achieved by communicating with the NRCS office in your project state. Next slide. It is important for all potential applicants to carefully review the notice of funding to ensure the submitted proposal includes all required information and provides a clear intent for the project goals. The review, negotiation, and selection process will move very quickly. These processes will include agency staff at the national headquarters and the local NRCS state office coordination. Please plan to work with your local NRCS state office if your proposal is selected for award. Now I'm going to hand it over to my teammates, Caroline and Angie, to coordinate the Q&A session. Caroline.
Great, thanks. So if anyone who's on the line has a question, please, it's easiest if you just put it in the Q&A chat box.
Caroline, we have one that came in through email.
Okay. Do you want
me to put it in? It's 3 long questions. Do you want me to put it in the Q&A?
Yeah, that would be good.
Okay.
Great. Thanks for checking that. The way we have it recorded. Okay, I'm seeing it now. Okay, I can, I'm going to read the first one. Regarding the 10% technical assistance cap, does this max apply toward partners, subawards, staff time that are under contract by the state agency to help implement the program? The model we're looking at using, if awarded, was to partner with NGOs to help implement the hunts. If we go this route, would partner staff time need to be included in the technical assistance totals for the grant, or does the 10% max only apply to the state agency staff? Does partner and state agency staff benefits need to be included in the technical assistance total? Kip, do you want to try that one, or?
Yeah, that one is one we might have to check in on because, you know, technical assistance covers a lot of things. It's not like what NRCS thinks of as technical assistance, but just right up front, as far as the actual state agency, state government, or tribal government, technical assistance refers to activities required to enroll landowners in public access program or to implement wildlife habitat improvements on access program lands. For VPA-HIP, all personnel costs are considered technical assistance. This may include a project coordinator or any other staff hired under the grant, but that is for the state agency, under the state agency or the tribal government. As far as partner, I haven't come across that question yet. So we might have to answer that at a later time.
Okay, I'll go to the next one. So we're gonna, again, as a reminder, we do plan to post the Q&A once we get the answers on our website. Also, we want to confirm that partners who are helping implement the grant are allowed to charge indirects in the subawards. Any limitation to this, same as what we have in a grant. Currently, California Department of Fish and Wildlife have a 25% negotiated overhead rate with feds. Is this the max for the subaward as well? This might be a good question for Tessa. Tessa, do you want to tack this one?
So my recommendation, since this sounds like it's specific to a potential proposal, is we go back to the NFO, and that question can be emailed to me. And basically, like the NFO says, any questions that are specific to the proposal, we can't answer because it is a competitive process. We want to make sure that we're protecting that integrity. If it was something specific to the VPA-HIP program itself, we could have an answer that is generalized where you as the potential applicant can review that and see how it applies to your proposal. That's something we can possibly review, Carolyn or Kip, and see if we can put that in the question and answers.
Well, let me just ask you quickly, Tess. They are allowed, like regular applicants are allowed to charge indirect costs with VPA-HIP, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So therefore, if they have subawards, they would follow 2 CFR 200. So the subaward should be allowed to as well apply indirect costs, correct? I think that's the question.
Excuse me, my recommendation would still be to then the 2 CFR 200, the NFO has a link to the 2 CFR 200, and it would be up to the potential applicants to review that to see how it applies to their proposal.
Okay.
Versus us telling them, yes, it does, or no, it doesn't.
Okay. Let me read the third question. California Department of Fish and Wildlife currently contracts with a vendor to conduct drawings for these types of hunt opportunities on private lands. It's the same vendor that we use for the drawing of public land hunts. Okay. We would like to continue to use this vendor to implement these hunts if awarded with VPA-HIP funds. California Department of Fish and Wildlife currently charges a small application fee for this, the proceeds of which are designated as program income and returned back to the program they were generated in. We want to confirm that it would be okay for us to continue to do this as long as the funds generated by application fees are returned to and made available to provide additional hunt opportunity within the program. Okay, so I think what you're saying is you're collecting program fees and you want to confirm if you collect program fees that are generated from these funds that that's okay as long as they're returned to the program. Again, I think this is a general 2 CFR 200 question. So if there's nothing specifically spoken against it in the NOFO that says you can't include program fees, you would follow 2 CFR 200 guidelines on this. But we'll add it to the list, the question to be addressed for the FAQ. But Tessa, is there anything you want to add to this question?
No, I appreciate the response you provided, and it's great. We can definitely make sure that we answer it in a general form.
Yeah. Yep, let's do that. Okay, so Are there any other questions that have come in that you see, Angie? Because I'm not seeing anything right now in the Q&A. So I'm wondering if I'm not seeing something right.
No, I don't see any others.
Okay.
There are some. This is Yamika. I'll go
Okay.
ahead and put one out. So
Okay.
one of the
Now,
questions
why?
is checking, make sure that these need to be submitted through grants.gov. I'm assuming that's the proposals and not the USDA EasyFed grant system. So Tessa, can you respond to that one?
Yes. So the NFO does make comment about that. I'm just double checking where it is.
I can see all the questions now too.
It is grants.gov.
Thank you.
Yeah. NRCS does not utilize the application feature inside of EasyFed grants. So the application does need to be submitted through grants.gov.
And that is under section A8. Or sorry, that talks about contacting grants.gov with issues, but there's somewhere in here where it says you do have to submit it via grants.gov. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Tessa.
Okay. I see the questions now. I don't know why they didn't download at first, but I'll continue with the list.
Okay.
Kip, this is for you. Can you, or maybe Yamika, can you provide examples of when AGI, HEL, and WC would be triggered? Maybe Yamika, you want to tackle that?
Yes, I can tackle
Okay.
that. And if any of the potential applicants have specific questions or project specific questions, please email those to us so that we can address those. But in cases where eligibility would be required, would be where the landowners are receiving payment. So let's say for conservation practices that are going to be installed on the land for these VPA-HIP projects, we're going to have to make sure that the land is eligible and the landowners are eligible in cases like that. But in cases where the grantee, as was stated in the presentation, if they're just providing like incentives or procuring some of the items through the grant process, so purchasing signs and things like that, that would be considered like an indirect benefit through the grant. And so provisions like that where the landowner is going to receive that item would not trigger AGI eligibility. And again, if you have specific questions, we would prefer that those project specific questions come in through email so that we can address those and ensure that we're not providing bias for anyone who intends to apply. Thanks.
So I'm going to read this question, but I don't think we could probably answer it here. It's not a real general one, and we'd have to take some time to answer it. But are there any existing or previous programs with a primary focus on deer population management via incentivizing private hunter access on private properties with a secondary focus on other SPP access? So I don't think we would be able to answer that. I don't know. Kip, what do you think?
No, we can't. This is specific to this program, so
yeah,
we wouldn't be able to answer that.
A subset of the funds was designated for WRE-WRP lands. If you do not have a project on WRE-WRP lands, do you have to complete a waiver? Kip?
Yeah, so as far as that goes, if there is none in the none of these lands in the project area, then you could get a waiver to that you wouldn't have to do the outreach requirement. And to be able to, you can work with NRCS, the ones that do have these lands in their area. You can work with NRCS. It's public information where these lands are located. So you can find out exactly where they are and be able to promote to those landowners. But yes, you can get a waiver if there are none in the proposed project area. So yes, definitely.
Okay, so will landowners that receive funding for, they put HIP, but basically for this program, be considered beneficiaries where AGI and eligibility apply? That's kind of another twist on it.
Yeah, I will try to address it, but I can't fully answer it because it will depend on what the state or the tribe intends to provide that funding for and how they intend to do it. That would trigger whether AGI and eligibility would be applicable. So it just depends on what the activity will be, or that what the funds will be used for.
Okay. Please re-review producer eligibility information. Okay, this is again on HEL, AGI, and duplicative payments, and how this does not apply to a typical landowner. I think they want maybe examples. So agencies can understand how to self-certify these requirements.
Okay. What we'll do in the FAQ document, we'll try to break down the producer eligibility, I guess, what's applicable and what's not applicable. I know it's become the the cause of a lot of issue and confusion because this is new for the program. But we'll try to break it down a lot more to make it a lot more understandable. The provision or language where it says that the state agencies will self-certify just means that they're, in cases where eligibility is going to be applicable, they're going to have to work with those state NRCS offices to help ensure that those USDA eligibility determinations are on file and set. So you're not going to be able to do it yourself, but you as participants are going to have to work with your states to get help with that, because you won't have access to those systems where we can check eligibility. So again, we'll provide more details in the FAQ that'll be placed on our website.
Thanks, Yumika. We're learning along with everyone else here on this AGI. It's very new to us. Okay, so at least on this program, our grant specialist is concerned that the September 30th agreement date is unlikely, as similar grants require 6 months from the application deadline. I know the last NOFO didn't require a full proposal and the agreement turnaround is fast, but I imagine this year's competitive application will take longer to review. Can you reassure me that the award agreements will be sent by September 30th? Kip, do you want to answer it or do you want me to answer it?
Either one. Yeah, you can. Yeah, it goes for all the programs. So
right,
yeah, everything's speeded up basically. So
right. So I don't think anyone can give you an assurance on a date. That date that's in the NOFO is an estimated date. I think that there's a lot of reviews and approvals that have to happen, which is why they normally take 6 months. but I can tell you that is our agency's target date. So everyone's going to be really working towards it. So that's about all I think we can say. Jennifer, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah,
but
thanks, Caroline. Yeah, thank you. You can always, as an applicant, you can always state in your statement of work in your budget that you want your start date to be March. If it aligns up with a planting season, a growing season, something like that, you can always set it a further out in the future date and base your budget on that. But we say to start in September because sometimes we get applicants that were submitted for a July 1st, which means everything has to be adjusted from the word go. Everything has to be moved forward in time. We can't award something that started in the past. So we say plan your start date as September. But that doesn't mean you can't plan your start date of November, January, March, whatever into the future that you want to. I would say base your start date on what your practices are and what you're looking at doing and make it logical to that.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer.
Mm-hmm. Because we can always award in September for a start date in November. Award dates and start dates are different things. So.
Right. Okay, Angie, do you see anything else in the VPA email box?
No, nothing in email.
Is there any other questions that you guys see that I don't know? I think I got them all. Okay.
Yeah, Caroline, mine is still refreshing my Q&A. Sorry.
It's not refreshing.
It is. It's slow to refresh. So I'm trying to see if we missed any questions that we can answer here.
Oh, yep. I'm seeing more now. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Oh boy. If awarded, will NRCS utilize Easy Fed grants to manage the award and reporting? Jennifer or Tessa?
Yes, Easy Fed grants will be used.
Let's see. I'm just trying to figure out. To determine if land is eligible, do they need to have a farm or tract number? Yamika, do you want to answer that? It's kind of along the same lines as AGI.
Yes. So in cases where eligibility is going to be applicable, then it would require that land is registered with the USDA. So it would require a farm and tract number, highly erodible land and wetland determination, and then the producer or landowner would also have to meet the AGI requirements. So yes, it would require that the land be eligible.
Okay, I think there's some of these that will wait, that all are around eligibility and AGI. Because this is asked several times, different ways, but just for clarification, if a state simply provides a payment to a landowner, say $5 an acre, for providing public access, no AGI, HEL, or WC is required. And I think we're going to delay answering that. Is that correct, Yamika, or are you comfortable answering that? Okay.
We'll actually put the distinction in writing. That way everybody has it. So we'll put that on the website.
Yep, everything. Okay, the NOFO emphasizes land enrolled in the Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program. Are you wanting applicants to focus on Conservation Reserve Enhancement acres similar to our WRE? Kip?
No, you don't have to focus on it, but it would be eligible for access onto that land. You just got to remember about duplicative practices, which is probably not something you're going to have to worry about, but you still have to, that still has to be checked to make sure that something hadn't been done with that conservation reserve program, that you would be doing the same thing with VPA-HIP. But no, there's no need for promotion on that. It's just the wetland reserve easement and the wetland reserve program as far as the promoting. But CRP would be eligible.
Can VPA-HIP programs be leveraged to provide incentives for specific species access, such as deer in areas where hunter access for deer population management is lacking? Kip?
No, that can be all part of your proposal, putting that information in your proposal, what you're thinking about doing. Yes, just you can add that information.
Please explain why the appropriated $70 million is not available.
I can speak
Do
to
you want to
part of
try
that.
it?
Yes.
Okay.
So the appropriations show the total amount that a program is provided for that year, but changes in apportionment don't always allow for the total amount to be made available for our funding opportunities. So that's the reason that you don't see 70 million, even though it's been appropriated. We've only been allowed to provide 52 million for FY26.
Okay. Can you clarify if funds can be used for landowner agreements signed prior to grant execution? Program would like to enroll landowners prior to the fall hunting season and would use grant funds to pay the following spring, if possible, if they get the grant. Kip, do you want to try that one? This one might be like a 2 CFR question too.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. Because this is really about the structure of agreements around 2 CFR 200. And Tessa, I don't know if you want to add anything on that one, but I think we might have to look up that answer for the sheet.
Yeah, I think that one will refer back to 2 CFR 200.
Can you provide clarification if pre-award costs will be considered within this grant? With a potential grant award date of October 1st, that is the month later than when our VPA generally opens up. So it seems like we either miss a month of program use or have to juggle multiple funding systems with a landowner agreement or push everything out for a year before actually starting. Allowing recapture or pre-award would allow us to begin cleanly on time. So pre-award costs, right now, I don't think there's anything specifically in the NOFO about it, but I don't remember. Tessa or Jennifer, do either of you guys remember offhand if we address that in the NOFO? I know some years we do.
Yeah, there's no word of it in the NFL. That's something we can discuss and see if we want to address it with the Q&As or if we want to modify the NFL.
Okay. Yeah, because I think pre-award is allowed in some circumstances in 2 CFR 200, but agencies don't have to allow them. That's an agency decision. And I know at times our agencies have not. So I think because we don't have clarification on this, we can't answer it directly, but we'll look into it. Jennifer, do you want to add anything? No.
Nope.
Feel like we've gone back and forth. In general, yeah, pre-award costs, the way they work is you usually can't get approval for more than 90 days. And if there's any delays, sometimes it just doesn't even work out timing wise. So, yeah, just as a warning, not always a good approach to count on them. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to see if there's any more questions that have come up because my Q&A does not automatically. Okay, there are. They keep coming. Okay, Jennifer, this is for you. Are you saying the award date and start dates are different? You gave examples of future dates, but what about a start date of September 30th and the agreement isn't sent until November? Does that mean we could charge back in time if the awards are sent out late? That would be pre-award costs again. But anyway, Jennifer, you want to address it?
That's a good question. It's a good question. The start date and the award date do not have to be the same date. The award date can be September 30 and the agreement could specify that it wants a start date of November. It just means that the budget plan and the deliverables are scheduled to start in November. So it could be awarded 9/30, start date could be 11/15, and I don't know if you'd have to even ask for approval to start work before then, but they do not have to be the same date, which has been a historical misconception, is that they have to be the same date, and they do not.
But basically, if the start date was before the award date, they would have to get pre-approved.
Correct.
Costs,
yeah, you can't have it that direction. You have to have it the other way.
Right, right. It has to be the other way. Okay. Can land enrolled in CSP also be enrolled for access via VPA-HIP funds? If so, please provide an example of how VPA-HIP funds would be considered duplicative on land enrolled in CSP. Kip, do you want to tackle that or do you want to delay it?
Yeah, well, it's something that you would, the individual practices of the enhancements, what they call them in CSP, if they would be the same as some of you might have some wildlife stuff that you've done on VPA or that you're going to do on VPA-HIP. So yes, that could run into something duplicative. That just has to be looked at, on a case by case. It just depends if you're doing the same. It's if you're doing the same practice that you did with CSP, and you're trying to do it with VPA-HIP funding, that is not allowed. Doing it with the same thing, but otherwise, it's fine if there's two programs there.
Okay, I think we reached the end here. I haven't seen anything go in new. I don't know if anyone else has.
No, that appears to be it, Caroline, for what's in the Q&A.
So we're going to work to get this out soon. We're trying to understand AGI, and we've got all your questions written in multiple different ways. So I think we'll be able to attack it for everyone pretty thoroughly on our FAQ sheet. Yumika and Kip?
Oh, I think one more came in. Sorry, while you were talking, Caroline.
Look at that. It was previously stated that the WRP is public information. Is this information available from the state NRCS office? Kip?
Yes, it is. They can give you a GIS layer to let you know exactly where those are located, and it is public information.
Yep. And Kip, if I can add to that too, that's another good reason for you to start building that relationship with the NRCS state office in your project state, so that you can be able to get the information. Like, I know someone just coming off the street saying, I want all the WRE and WRP sites in the state. And if your state office isn't familiar with like your state wildlife agency representative and things like that, you don't already have those relationships built, it could delay some things. So you want to start now working with your NRCS staff in your state and getting to know who your points of contact are going to be. But as Kip said, that information is available. And if your state doesn't have it, waivers are allowed for that, since we do have that set aside for WRE and WRP designated land. Thanks, Caroline. Thanks, Kip.
So two people have texted in to where is the FAQ going to be posted? So I think it could be posted of two places.
It's going to be on the VPA-HIP website.
Okay. And only. Does it get, it's only going to go there. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Sounds good. So if you just Google VPA-HIP NRCS, it'll take you right to that website. Okay. Every time I close out the Q&A and go back in, there seems to be another question. To that WRE question, can they also provide mailing info for those WRE lands so we can complete outreach? Kip or Yamika?
Yeah, that maybe, I'm not sure if they can provide you something that detailed, but there's ways I think that they can, but it's not what I was talking about. There's something more you have to do. Okay.
Yeah, Kip, I can answer that too. So there are going to be some limitations on what the state can provide you due to freedom of information and the privacy. So we got to, protect our participants' information. So there might be limits on what you can receive. But working with your state office, your state NRCS office, and if they are aware that you're submitting a proposal, hopefully you kind of giving them details on it, they will provide as much information as they legally can. But it just might not be the full mailing info, and it might not be down to the farm and track detail, because they can only provide a limited amount of information up front. Thanks.
Oh, someone put in, where can we find the recording of this call? If Keisha's still on, she can probably help us, or Yamika.
Yep.
Yes, the recording, if you're signed up and you register, you'll have immediate access to the recording. But as soon as possible, it will be placed on the website, but it does take time due to 508 compliance to be placed on the website. But after this meeting, wait maybe an hour. If you register, you would have access to it. If you have any questions, just reach out to us about that.
I just found something real. I wanted to. If VPA-HIP awardees, this is for that last question before that, and this is to do with the WRE, WRP. If VPA-HIP awardees request landowner contact information or any other information protected by Section 1619 of the Farm Bill, NRCS can work with awardees to put in place a 1619 cooperator agreement. That, I'm just throwing that out there, Yamika, that's some information that we have from the last round.
Yeah, and thank you for clarifying that, because that covers awardees, not the applicants. Right. So at this stage, there may be limitations, and I think someone had put in the chat, if they are able to get a 1619 agreement with the landowner, then the state probably would provide that information. But we have to have, NRCS has to have something in place to cover PII and the other
Right.
protected info from our
Right.
participants. So thanks, Kip.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Let's see. I don't know why I have to. I guess we'll give it a minute. I think we got to the end because Yumika covered the 1619 question. So someone put in the chat the VPA-HIP website too. Oh, that was Keisha. Thanks, Keisha. And okay, so let's just give it a minute, see if any more questions come in. But I think we're near the end here. And Angie, is there anything coming in the VPA-HIP email box?
No.
Thank you, Caroline.
Yep.
Just to add to the VPA-HIP website, when the FAQ document is made available, the website is going to look a little different. We're going to provide that in a PDF format so that you'll be able to download it directly from the site, and then we'll have the webinar recording also added to the site. So you'll kind of see that near the bottom of the page when we have those documents reviewed and ready for the public to be added, but just giving that disclaimer. And it doesn't appear that we have any more questions, so we will go ahead and end this presentation, but want to thank you all for your time and attendance today. And we're looking forward to receiving a lot of proposals for VPA-HIP. So hopefully we have some great projects in the works for this year. So again, thank you for your time. Have a great day, everyone.